Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington. You can find us at fabricpatch.net. And today we are going to do the second quilt in our Hoffman Celebrate the Seasons border series. My daughter and I have owned and operated a busy quilt shop in Washington State for over 20 years. We have a retreat center, an active YouTube channel, and a large pattern line featuring our creations. My two sons work on machines. One daughter-in-law is our videographer and the other is a long-arm quilter. We are a family that love each other, we laugh together, and every once in a while we get some work done. We have a crew that are saints for their efforts at keeping us on track. Thanks for joining us on our wild ride. All right, so this one is our second panel in the series, and again, if you are not doing this series with us, the information that we talk about in terms of borders is transferable to whatever it is that you're working on. I will show you throughout this year all kinds of fun little tidbits, whether it's about color, tools, cutting, measuring, whatever. So you'll learn all sorts of different ideas about borders. Last month we did this one, and this one was very simple. It was just basic, about just some simple borders with cornerstones. Hopefully you got that done and you have it in your house. And this month we're going to make it a little bit more challenging, and we'll keep going until we kind of by the 12th month or by the 13th class we will have covered all of the basics and all of the extras for borders. If you still want to do the series with us, we do have these available individually. It is again a 2-yard digitally printed panel, so individually they're like $24, but we have a special if you buy the entire series, which you would end up getting 13 panels for the price of 11. We ship them quarterly, so you'll get 4 at first and then you get bundles of 3 every quarter. You only pay shipping the first time, and then we pay for your shipping after that. So it's kind of a pretty good deal if you want to just commit to making a new wall hanging, door banner, or quilt every month. This is the one that we're doing this month. Chill in the air again, theoretically, for January. The one for February, I'm just going to give you a quick little teaser because I happen to have it here. It's beautiful. And it says, "Be Mine." I'm just going to show you part of it. This one will be the one that is coming up for March, of course. So kind of fun, beautiful colors, beautiful seasonal opportunities to go ahead and decorate your home. So, all right, so let's get right into it. We're going to start the same way that we did last time, which is that the way that this panel is printed, let me hold up one that has not been cut. And again, if you don't understand the difference between digitally printed fabric, it just means that it is done very specifically, almost like the same way that we print copies and print pictures. And so everything is really quite exact, and they also have an opportunity to use far more colors than just the original 24 Pantone colors. So there is a line, you can see that right in between the panel. This measures approximately 24 inches wide, where we're going to cut here, and then this gives you approximately 39 inches by about 42 inches of usable piece. Now last time I think we used this piece in the border rather than used it for the back. This time we are going to use this piece for the back of our quilt. Again, you can do anything you'd like. You can use your own colors, you can do something different, you can use another piece entirely, but that's what we're going to do with this one. So I've already cut it right on that line that was kind of created where the image changed, and this is my panel. Now the other thing is it almost looks like it's circular. It really isn't. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this panel 22.5 inches wide by 24.5 long. And I'm going to show you an easy way to do that. All right, so before we do any cutting, I just want to mention I tend to use Quilter Select rulers. They don't sponsor us. I don't get any kickback from that. We do sell them on our website. If you have a local quilt shop that sells them, I really like them because they have a very nice grippy backing so that when I'm cutting, nothing slides. So it does tend to be my ruler of choice, and the ruler that you're going to need most of the time whenever you're doing anything where you're adding lots of borders is that 6 by 24 ruler. I think the one I'm using today is an 8.5 by 24, but it's nice to have that lengthy ruler. This time you're also going to need a second one. My rotary cutter of choice also tends to be the Quilter Select. Again, just because it's a nice high quality, heavy cutter. It is a true left and a true right, easy change blade. I just tend to like it. Whatever you like, whatever fits your hand is perfectly okay. It doesn't matter. And the other thing, if you watch me do any videos, I talk a lot about the same sorts of marking utensils. You do need to have something that is appropriate for use on your quilt. So it would never, ever, ever be a ballpoint pen. You can use lead pencil if you'd like. You can use a chalk pencil. You can use an air erase or a water erase marker. I tend to go pretty consistently to these two things. This one is a friction marker. It's a specific pin that when you make a mark, it looks like it's a ballpoint mark because it's a nice dark mark, but as soon as I hit it with an iron, that mark goes away. It does leave a tiny little residual mark, and that mark will come back if the quilt reaches 17 degrees or the fabric. But as soon as I wash it, that secondary mark also goes away. I have consistent results with this, and sometimes when that mark goes away and it leaves that little white, that's what I use on dark fabrics. And you've seen me use this in quite a few other videos. So I like my friction marker for marking on fabric. The other one that I use often is this one. This is a WetErase marker. We sell both of these on our website. The WetErase marker I just use for marking my ruler. It's a wet erase so that when I mark my ruler, if I end up brushing it across with my hand, the mark doesn't come off. If I flipped it over accidentally, it's not going to come off onto my fabric. The only way it will come off is if I add a little bit of a wet paper towel or just get my finger wet and wipe it off. It works really, really well. But again, this is for my ruler only. It is not for my fabric. All right, so knowing that these are the two that I'm going to use, let's go ahead and look right at our panel here. So our panel, again, this looks like this is a circle, but in fact, it's a little bit narrower than it is long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my long ruler. This is my 24.5 ruler. And when I line this up, you can see that my 24.5, I'm right at the edge here, and I'm right at the edge here. So if I cut that, and then I add my 1/4 inch seam allowance, you can see that I would end up sewing into my snowflakes. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to turn it around this way so I can see it a little bit better. I want to go approximately an inch past the snowflake, and I'm using this ruler instead of my Quilter Select because I think you can see it a little bit easier in the camera. So see my line right there? I'm an inch past. And now down here, here's my 24.5. I'm going to add 2 more inches. 24, 25, 26. And in fact, if you look at that, see the edge of my snowflake right there? You can see that I'm an inch past. So just to double check, I'm 24.5, 25, 26.5. That looks pretty good. What I might go ahead and do is I am just going to make a little mark at the top and the bottom of my ruler. I'm going to come over here, make sure that I'm nice and straight. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my line along here. Now I could go ahead and cut that, but I really want to make sure that everything is nice and square. So instead I'm just going to go ahead and make that mark. Come over here. make this mark. Again, using an appropriate marking utensil. This is my iron erase. You can use whatever you feel comfortable with. So I'm 26.5. I think I mentioned that in the beginning, I hope, that we're going to cut this 26.5 long by 22.5 wide. So now I'm just going to turn it, take another look here, and I want the same thing. I want to make sure that I am an inch past my snowflake. So I'm right there, and an inch past. So see, here's my 1/2 inch mark. So if I go to right here, there is my 22.5. And the mark is right there, if you can see that. I'm just going to double check. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to mark it. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I'm just going to go ahead and turn this. And when I cut, to make sure that I'm straight, I just have to make sure that I have a straight edge down here and a straight edge here. So see this line that I made before? I'm going to line that up right down here. Line it up on this line over here. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And the idea with squaring up a quilt or a panel or a block is you kind of have to start somewhere. Start somewhere so that you have a nice straight edge. I'm going to come up now. So here's my straight edge. And see this line up here? I can line that up. Make sure that I have a nice square angle right here. Okay, so that edge is done. I'm going to turn it. I know this is straight. It's angled with that. I'm going to line that up. I'm going to line this up. I don't really have to, I mean, I can measure it, but really what I'm worried about now is making sure that everything stays nice and square. So I'm right on that line. See the line on my ruler? Right on the edge of my fabric. And over here on the side, I'm right on that line that I made with my friction marker. Double check. All right, I've got two straight edges. Now I'm going to be a little bit fussier about measuring. I have my nice straight edge here at the top, my nice straight edge at the side. I'm just going to double check and make sure that I am, and we decided our measurement was 22.5 wide by 26.5 long. So I'm going to go ahead and take my ruler. Here's my 22.5 mark. This particular ruler has a 1/2 inch at the beginning of it, so it's a little bit strange. I might, in fact, turn that around so it's easier for you to see. So we come to 22, 23, so 22.5 would be right there. Maybe that'll make a little bit more sense. All right, so see my line? I'm right on the edge right there. And then right over here, so I am 22.5. I'm right on the edge right here, and I am just going to crawl my way up. So my other option would be to just go for it, turn this around, line up this edge right here, line up this cut. I feel pretty confident that I'm square. And that's what I'm going to do. Because I'm straight here, I'm straight here. I'm 22.5 wide. And let's see. Here's that line at the bottom. I'm going to line it up there. I'm straight on the edge here. My other reference was that I was an inch past my outer snowflake. There's that outer part of that snowflake, and you can see I'm exactly an inch. So I feel extremely confident that I'm still right where I should be. Okay, one left. I'm going to do one last little check. So remember we were 22.5 wide. Let's see if we are 26.5 long. I'm going to need my other ruler again. This ruler is 24.5. So I'm going to add 2 inches up here. So I am right on the edge. 24.5, 25, 26. I'm right on that line. Everything is nice and square. And look down here. Here's that line that I made. And I'm right where I should be. Everything is still nice and square. So I'm going to go ahead and make this first cut. And then again, I feel absolutely confident turning this. And see, I'm dead on that line. I'm going to go ahead and line this up. I'm straight on the edge here, straight on what I've already cut. I'm following that line, and I'm straight up here at the top. All right, so this is how I pretty consistently would square up a quilt as well. A block, or in this case, our panel. So our panel now is 22.5 wide by 26.5 long. All right, so the next part is we have to decide what colors we're going to do. I think we showed you a shot at the beginning of what it's going to look like. And what we're doing is we're going to put little 4 patches around the corner. And so we could end up with some sparkly color. We could end up with some nice even color. It just sort of depends on what you like. But you are going to end up needing a couple of extra fabrics. So this was what we cut off. There's nothing wrong with this. This fabric is beautiful. It's the exact right color. So we have these pieces that we can use. I went ahead and looked through my stash. I happen to love snowflakes, so I have a couple. So I have this one. This is just an old fabric. I don't even know. This one, super old. So whenever I'm auditioning things from my stash, I usually kind of lay them out, take a little look, and see if there's anything that's obviously fantastic or obviously hideous. So if we take a little peek here, oh, I have one other one. This one is kind of funny. It's actually a winter scene fabric. My guess is since all of these are in my stash, they're probably no longer available in our quilt shop, but you might be able to find something like that. But if you have a stash of blues or snowflakes, this is how you would look. So when I look at it, I'm going to pull out the ones that I think clearly do not work. This fabric is absolutely gorgeous. I love it. It's super sparkly. It kind of has a snowflake look, but for me, it doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because it's very gray and there's a lot of crisp white in here. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and pull that one out. The other one that I'm going to pull out is I think I'm going to pull out this one. This is a beautiful fabric, but I think it's maybe just a tiny bit dark. This is almost a black, dark, dark, dark blue. And this is probably the darkest blue, and it's not quite so dark. So I'm going to pull that one out. The other thing is that whenever you're looking at fabrics, you want to decide if it's in one of the 4 categories, which is a pure fabric, which means that it's just absolutely right out of the crayon box without anything added? Or is it a tint, which is what we think of as a pastel? So something that has maybe a little bit of extra white in it would be a tint. Or is it a tone, which means it has a little bit of gray added to it? Or is it a shade, which means it adds a little bit of black added to it? I would say that this is mostly pure fabric, maybe almost on the tint side, which means it has a little bit of white. So if you have any fabrics that have a little bit of gray to it, it might not really look right. And that's what I would say with this one. This fabric, it seems like it would be right. It has almost the same kind of aesthetic, but see how this one is a little bit gray, or some people will call it dulled, because it has gray added to this color, and there really isn't any gray toned in any of these colors. So I would pull this one out. This one I think is also has a little bit of gray in there. That blue is really not a clear blue. I'm going to pull that one out. This one I like. The only difference is that these snowflakes, the little extra in here, is white, whereas this has a whole lot of almost cream. I think it's supposed to be light blue, but I still kind of like it. I don't know how it's translating in the camera, but this one is still going to make the cut for a bit. This one I love. I don't know where I got this fabric, but I think the other thing that's really nice about this is that there's ever so subtle, almost periwinkle-y blue in that, and this one has that too. There's almost a little hint of a purple in there. I really like that one. This one I think is really pretty, sparkly. I like that one. I think the color is really, really nice. It's a winter scene instead of a snowflake, but I don't think that's going to matter. This one is also, to me, a little bit too dark. Just because, too, I've got a lot of mediums here. I probably should keep it dark, but I'm going to toss that one. This one I like. I think maybe it even goes with this one, but this one seems to have a little too much purple for me. We've got yellow and red as a supportive color, but this has a lot of lavender in there, so I'm going to take that one out. All right, so now I've narrowed it down. I don't have a whole lot of variety, so I do have a couple of others that I pulled from the shop that I kind of liked. This particular one is from the Winter Playground collection. It is kind of nice because whenever you're doing adding a bunch of little pieces, it's nice to have a mixture of darks and mediums and even lights. So I've got enough probably of the light left of what I've cut off. This one I think is really pretty. This one is really, really nice. I think, again, it has that same sparkly, snowflakey kind of aesthetic, and it looks really good with my other ones that I've kept. This one is called Snowville, and this is the light navy in Snowville. And I love this one. This has that nice, again, clear blue and a bright white, so it looks really nice with this. And it looks really good with the other ones. It might be a little bright. Ooh, it makes that one look dirty. I'm not so sure that these two play well together. So we'll see about that. And then the last one that I picked, in case if I needed a little bit of a border or something, I did pick a bright white. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to use this, but I want you to see at home, if you're ordering this or ordering fabrics to go with it, what you would really like as a background really would be the bright white. And this is just your basic Kona white. All right, I am going to sort through my fabrics for just a minute. I'm gonna overthink it a little bit. I'm gonna fill up my coffee cup. I'm gonna be right back and I'm gonna show you the decisions that I settled with. Okay, so we've made our decisions and I want to show you what we've cut. So first of all, there is a downloadable pattern. It's attached and you can print this off, and all of the math I'm going to tell you, it is written out, but I just want to explain to you how we came up with the math that we came up with. So first of all, let's talk about the math. So remember that our panel was 22.5 inches wide by 26.5 inches long. Whenever we talk about adding squares or adding anything. We always talk about the finished size. So this panel will finish 22 by 26. So if we have a bunch of 2-inch squares behind us, if we have 22 inches to fill, that means that we would have 11 2-inch squares, right? That we're going to cut 2.5 that will finish 2 inches. The 26-inch will have 13 2-inch squares. They'll finish 2 inches. We're going to cut 2.5. The only reason I mention that is because if what you're doing is something different and you want to apply this type of a border to that, I just want you to know how I came up with the math that I came up with. The other thing is that if something happens and you cut something wrong, it's kind of nice to know how we came up with the math so that you have that design opportunity, that opportunity to just add an extra square, do something different to make it fit and make it so that it will work. Because remember, and I tell people this all the time, the pattern is just the design according to me. It means absolutely nothing. I'm going to tell you what I did, tell you the measurements so you can have the exact same results, but really you can change it up any way that you'd like. So that brings us to the first border. So right here, this little kind of space back behind the squares that we're putting in, you can add a color if you'd like. If you want this to be a very bold border, you're going to need about 1/2 yard. What I did though is, if you remember in the beginning, I cut off a little piece off of the bottom of the panel and a little piece off of the top. So on that bottom piece, I was able to cut a 2.5-inch strip. Wasn't very big, but I was able to get one. And then I was able to cut a 4.5-inch strip. Out of that 4.5-inch strip, I cut an 18.5-inch piece and a 4.5-inch. So this is a 4.5 by 4.5-inch square, 4.5 by 18.5. Again, it's all written in your pattern, but that's my size. On the top, that other piece, I did almost the exact same thing. I got a 2.5-inch strip, and with what was left, I cut a 4.5-inch strip, and this one, let me just refer, was a 14.5-inch, and this one is 8.5-inch piece. So let's just talk for just a second then. If this is 22 inches finished, this is going to be 8 inches finished. 22 minus 8 is going to be 14, right? So if it's 14, I know that I need 7 2-inch squares, 2-inch finished squares. Then I'm going to cut 2.5-inch, right? So again, you don't have to know this. I'm just telling you so that you can make this work for your own thing. So if you do all of the math, that I need 7 2.5-inch squares here, 7 here, 4 there. The ones I need here, here, and here, I need a total of 104. One last little bit of math, if you're still with us, is that if you cut a 2.5-inch strip, you will get 17 2.5-inch squares. So if you know that, then what you'll need for all of your little squares around here is a minimum of 5 strips. Now, a minimum of 5 strips means that you don't have a whole lot of color. So if you look at what I have, what I did is I went ahead and cut off some of those strips of some of the fabric that we had talked about, some of the ones that I showed you. I did find another one in my stash. It was just a fat quarter, so I cut off 2 kind of pieces of that. And then this one is absolutely beautiful. This is very sparkly. This is a shot cotton in the pearl, and I think the color of this was wedding cake. And so I just thought it was just beautiful, and so we've added that. So I have a few more pieces than what I need, but that makes it kind of nice so I can kind of play with it a little bit. And then this was the piece that I picked for my outside border, and you're going to need 1 yard of that, and that's what's going to be on the outside edge. I'm going to end up cutting that into 3-inch strips, and then I also wanted a little bit of that to be inside the squares. So now this is the part where, again, you have a little bit of deciding. Again, I've told you everything that you need to cut, all of these sizes, because if you use this fabric right here, then you've used up everything. All you'll need is your panel. This other part of your panel is going to be your backing. What we cut off is going to be that first border. So all you'll need is a roughly 5, maybe 6, 7 would be great, 2.5-inch strips, for your little squares around the outside edge, and then you would need 1 yard for your outer border and your binding, and that's it. So what you can do is a couple things. You can go ahead and cut these strips into 2.5 inch squares if you want to, and then you can kind of play with it like a puzzle and kind of decide where you want things to go and what you want to put there. This tends to be sort of a typical thing that people will do because as quilters we like to overthink it. We like to plan it and stand back and look at it and see if there's a pattern or not a pattern. I'm going to tell you this is not the way I'm going to do it. What I would do is I would go ahead and just take 2 strips or maybe half strips, sew them together right sides together, cross cut them so I have a bunch of 2Zs, and then I will take those 2Zs, sew them together and into 4Zs, a little 4 patch, lay those out, decide what else I need, and then put those together. So that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a bunch of these together, cut them apart a little bit. I will have extra because of what I have here. That gives me an opportunity to play with the color a little bit. So I'm going to add all of those in, and then we'll be right back and I'll show you how to finish up this border and add the last border. All right, I love the way it is looking. So what I really like about all of these little squares here is it just has such a sparkly little look, and that's also why I like a lot of different colors, different textures, light and dark, and really no distinct pattern. That's what creates that sparkle that's happening. So whatever yours might look like, but again, try not to overthink it too much. But what will happen is you can see that I have sewn this piece to these here, so you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's my little 4 patch here. Here's the I think it's 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 sewn to this piece. The only thing I notice is that I will change it in the pattern, and I'm actually going to make this one piece and this one piece, because I don't know if you noticed, but typically we'll sew on the top and the bottom and then the side and the side, but I have this little thing going on here. So what I'm going to have to do, and if you've been following along with me, you're going to have to sew this side on first and then sew this bottom on, and then sew this one to this one, sew the top on, and then you'll be able to sew this one and sew the side on, if that makes sense. So that's what we're going to do next. I just want to point out that this is why it's really important to always have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And in this case, because of all of the bulk in the seams, and when you're pressing, usually we might do just a scant 1/4 inch, so just a little bit smaller, like a needle width smaller than a 1/4 inch, just so that everything fits in there properly. Because again, this is a 2 inch finished square now, and we started with 2.5 inches. If you don't have a proper seam allowance or you didn't cut properly, these blocks are never going to fit on this side. So that's what you really want, is to make sure that everything ends up exactly right and flat. Everything fits in there so you don't have to, you know, whack something off halfway through the center. Once we get all of this on, we're going to go ahead and cut our strips. Okay, you're going to take this one, you're going to cut it 3.5 inch wide strips, and then you're going to put that on your outside edge. Once you've sewn all of that together, it's going to make your quilt 36.5 inches wide by 40.5 inches long, which means that this piece, which is 39 by 42, will fit perfect for your backing. You also have enough here that this can be your binding, or you can add something different for your binding, but we'll show you the whole thing finished at the end. Thank you so much for sewing with us, and we'll see you next month, because next month we're going to work on our topper, and again, table topper, wall hanging, door banner, whatever it is you want to do with it. Our next one is going to be for Valentine's Day. Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.